We have a lot today, so welcome to this fifth in our series on the Four Dharmas. Excuse me, Four Dharmas, Four Dharmas of Gampopa. And so let's start today with a wonderful motivation, with a very, very big mind, including all other sentient beings, and especially those in our life, in our karma, including everyone with the most loving care we possibly can towards all of them. And then with a joyful mind, because we have in our lives, and it's so rare, we have dharma, good dharma. We're alive in a time when the Buddha's teaching is still there. And it's not just there as teachings and ideas, it's there as a living tradition, so we can meet those who live the teachings, hold the teachings, can transmit even the most deep of teachings through their lineage. And not only do we live in those times, but somehow we've connected. And this life's potential is mind-bogglingly amazing. Dharma is forever. Everything else comes and goes. Everyone else comes and goes. So we have true reason to be very, very, very happy. And so with that joy, we say our prayers to help us to listen well to these teachings and to take them deep, deep, deep into our hearts so that we become the Dharma that we are learning about. Thank you very much.
Sonje chodom soji chonom la jancho bado dane chapsonje. Dagi jinso jipe sonamje. Drola penchera sonje dropara sho. Semchen tamche dewa dang dewe judang dembara joche. Dongal dang dongal je judang tralwara joche. Dongal me bede wa tampa dang men tralwara joche. Nerin chadan ne tang tralwe tanyong chempola ne para joche. Deyata shame shamawati shameta shatrom. Om kure marazite karota keore tejowati ola yani beshuda. Nimale malapanaye kukure kaka grase grasana o muki paramuki amki. Shametane sawa grahabanda nane ne grehita sawa pawa. Prawadina vimukta mara pasha sata pita buddha mudra anugatita savamare. Buddharita parishuddha begat santu savamara kama. Palen sawe lama rinpoche. Dagi chewara bende denshula. Kadrin Champo Gone Jisonte Kuson Tuje Gadro Sado Sol.
So we have, well, I do, I suppose. We have a lot to do today. I've got a lot to do. And let's go back to the overall focus, and thank goodness. All these explanations are simply to give us a clue about the four dharmas of Gampopa. Dharmas become dharma. Dharma becomes a path. The path is the removal of delusion. Delusions manifest primordial wisdom. And so far, we've seen that we can take these four, where the first one is about a good Buddhist, a good precious human existence, a good Purusha, somebody whose life is living according to dharma, in the sense of the natural laws of existence, whose life is tending more and more towards goodness, pure morality, right conduct, and especially practicing virtue and avoiding harm. And then we saw, so that's the dharmas, the way things manifest to the mind, become dharma, the truth of things. And then we saw the second line, where dharma becomes an actual path we can use to tell us more about the Shravaka path, where the path leads the mind away from its intoxication with the five senses and with all the things that come with being embodied, being alive, being in this body with its eyes and ears and senses and inner chemistry and hormones and all the rest of it. A way of finding out from constantly creating rebirth through the repetitive power of karma. People say cyclic existence. Always makes me think, here in France, every Sunday morning, you see more cyclists than anything else. You know, cyclic existence, a very, very weird phrase. But anyway, repetitive. So in past lives, there was hate and aggression, so people come back as our enemies, they aggress us, so we aggress in return, we make more karma, they come back. In past lives, there was desire and unresolved situations of couples, people come back, your ex becomes your new one in a brand new life. The old story comes up, you make more desire and aggression and all the complicated things, more karma, you come back again. It could go on and on forever. So our second type of precious human knows there's an out, and it's called nirvana, the out. We already went there, but we're going back there today. This word nirvana, out, exit, put an end to all of that by withdrawing the mind from its karmic inheritance, from the five senses, taking the mind within itself into deep absorption, until all of the history has been washed away and there's nothing but deep absorption. Last week, I think even perhaps the week before, we started on the bodhisattva path. And this is why I said, thank goodness, this is just an introduction to the four dharmas, because the bodhisattva path I cannot present in just a couple of teachings. And this is why in the programming coming up, next weekend is a practice weekend for those who were on the Tonglen course. So there's no talking teachings next weekend. But after that, we start about 9 or 10 weeks of teachings about the bodhisattva path. And even then, we will just brush the surface. So today, I'm very glad I can announce those teachings. You've seen them on the program, because it kind of gets me off the hook of how do I present the bodhisattva path. And today, move on to the Mahamudra path through the Four Dharmas of Gampopa. No way. But anyway, last time we saw the view of the bodhisattva path, the view as the two truths, absolute truth or ultimate truth and relative truth. So I was asked, Neil asked, and to unpack these two terms about relative, about ultimate or absolute. Now, if we go back to the etymology, they're both right. They're both right in different ways. Ultimate comes from ultima, which means at the end. At the end. So when we say ultimate truth, it's the truth that we'll fully discover at the end of our path. In other words, when we are Buddhas. When we go to one of our main teaching texts in this Kagyu tradition, which is the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra. Uttara means ultimate. It means ultimate in the sense of final, at the end. And as Akon Rinpoche used to say in his English, which was sometimes not correct, but somehow more impactful than correct, he would say, in the end up. In the end up. So in the end up, when you're Buddha, what's truth at that stage that unfolds through all the different levels and becomes sometimes newer truth replaces older truth, sometimes truth suddenly deepens and takes on a new dimension. So at the end, and there's a lot of discussion about this word uttara in Sanskrit. It's where we get our word atta in English from. So it means final, at the end, in the sense of a path. Absolute, in its origin, is a negative term, absoluta. It's the at the beginning, makes it a negative. And it means when embellishments or projections have been taken away. So what's the truth when we take away, in this case, all our subjectivity, our subjective projections, the real truth in itself, not our version, our growing version. What is absolute? It's like the word absolution, you know, you get absolution, you get something removed, something washed away. Our delusions are washed away. It's very relevant to this third line of Gampopa, the removal of delusions. It comes down to the same thing, because in the end, we will find a mind where all delusions have been removed. So we can call it absolute or ultimate truth. What I can't go into today, but it's a translator, it's very helpful, but it's the translator's dilemma. Because what is it in Tibetan? And what problems did Tibetans have translating the Sanskrit into Tibetan to get the term that now I translate into English as ultimate or absolute truth? And it is Döndam, Döndam. Now in Döndam, you get Dön and Dam. Dam means sacred. It's not too difficult, sacred. But the Dön, in the dictionaries where they translate from Sanskrit to Tibetan, has 6 meanings. When, if you are a Tibetan and you hear Dön, it resonates in 6 ways. And there's no one word in English that even reproduces 2 of those at the same time. Translator's nightmare. What do you put? Because when you know Tibetan and you hear Dön, oh my goodness, it means so much. When we say ultimate truth or absolute truth, Döndam. So Dön means, one of the 6 meanings is meaning. It's the highest meaning. But Dön also means the point, the whole point. Dön also means what our mind focuses on, the object. So if we look at something, the visual focus. If we hear something, the sound. But then in meditation, and deepest meditation, what is the turn? What is it that is presenting itself to our mind? So Dön has 6 meanings. And Döndam means this sacred turn is what now we translate as absolute truth. So the view of Mahayana is the 2 truths, the indivisibility, which is so important, of absolute and ultimate. No absolute over there and relative down here. Separate. What is perceived as our relative conventional reality has an absolute dimension to it, in it, that's part of it. And there is no absolute which is other than the expression. The delusion is very strange. So we need to understand that. We understand that through Mahayana philosophy. And then to understand that, we need to study. And we need to go back to the great philosophers of Mahayana to see what they said. And then as the centuries went by, how Tibetan great minds unpacked that and presented it for us, how they digested it, chewed it, digested it, and puked it up for us baby birds so that we could get some nourishment from it. When we go back, we see first the teachings of Nagarjuna about shunyata, about emptiness, voidness. which are mainly based on the second phase of the Buddha's teaching, which is an illusion-destroying phase. Whatever delusions we can make, even as quite advanced Buddhists, cuts them apart. And so Nagarjuna's teachings, like his 27 root verses, root chapters on middle way, where 27 major delusions are taken apart, destroyed. It kind of leaves you with no ground to stand on. It's about emptiness in the sense that many people present it. And at the very end of the last session, when Myron came in and Third Bhajan was saying it doesn't exist and so on, then very much that kind of tonality. It took time for that to sink in India, Nagarjuna's teachings or the Prajna Paramita. A couple of centuries after him comes the second great reference in Mahayana Buddhism, Asanga. And through Asanga, we get Maitreya's teachings, which are mainly based on that third and final phase of what Buddha taught during his lifetime, about Buddha nature. And there we're not so much concerned with destroying the illusions, because the second phase of the Buddha's teaching did that. Nagarjuna did that. We take away the confusion. We take away the wrong ideas. But once they're away and they're stripped, in the last part of his life, Buddha presented the ultimate truth. In the end, what's really true. The absolute truth, when all of the confusion is stripped away, even the finest. What is it? And we call that Buddha nature. And so Asanga presented the view based on Buddha nature. Then when we get to Tibet, as the centuries went by, then based on the teachings of Nagarjuna's disciples and their disciples, and based on the teaching of Asanga and his disciples and their disciples, then we find that the Tibetan schools, like the Gelugpas and the Kajupas and so on, tended towards one or the other. And even within the Kajupa schools, from Karmapa to Karmapa, one Karmapa would tend more towards Nagarjuna's teachings, one would tend more towards Asanga's teachings, for very good reasons, because all teachings are remedies. All philosophies are just thoughts, but thoughts that remedy wrong thoughts. So anyway, we need to study all those views so we start to get a very clear idea of what the bodhisattva view is. But let's put it another way, and let's put it in the way of the conclusion in our Kagyu lineage. And it is this. It is this. Existence is vast, vast, vast beyond anything any of us could ever take on board in our mind. It's so vast. These days, materially, physically, we have some example. I was giving it the other day to a group I help, but let me just go through it very, very quickly. You know, this Voyager 1, Voyager 2, these spacecrafts they launched 43 years ago to get to the edge of the solar system and beyond, and they just sort of got out the solar system. 43 years. How fast do they travel? They traveled 10 kilometers a second, more or less, 10 miles a second. If you think 10 miles away from you, 1 second you're there. That's pretty fast. For 43 years to get to the edge of our solar system. They would need to carry on traveling for 12 billion years to get to the next star system, the closest stars to ours. Our star, the sun, is in the Milky Way. In the Milky Way, I've got the figures, I forget them. There are 200 billion stars like our sun. That's in our galaxy. 200 billion stars. Just think you're traveling in Voyager 2, how long it's going to take. If it takes 12 billion years to get to the closest star, if you just took a trip around the Milky Way, it's going to take you a very long time. The Milky Way is one galaxy in 2 trillion galaxies in the known universe, not even talking about multiverses and parallel universes. It is so big out there, we just cannot begin. Shantideva says, wherever there is space, there is life. It's really the other way around. Wherever there's life, there's space, and the perception of space, but never mind. It's the same thing. It is so big. And then in time, Buddha tells us there was no beginning. We don't have a beginning story in Buddhism. We can't say it began like this, and we can't say it began then. Buddha teaches that our particular universe started at one time, but it was just one of many universes. There were other universes before, and minds travel from universe to universe through time. We see that in the Kala Chakra teachings. No matter how far you can stretch your imagination to go back, there is no beginning to you. To me, can you imagine that? How far you go back. Not 100 lives, not 1,000, not 100,000. No beginning. And if we don't practice Dharma effectively, almost no end ahead. It is so big. In this world, this tiny world, a tiny speck in this vast cosmos, there are already, 7, 8, 9 billion people. All like you, like me, with their hopes, their fears, their lives, their friends, their enemies, their health. 9 billion. When we know just one other person, 2 other people, and feel how complicated their life is, how vast this universe of minds, not to mention animals and all the other beings, ghosts, spirits. It is so, so big, and there is so much suffering. So we try to get our heads around that, the vastness of it in time, in space, the vastness of the suffering. That's one thing that's going on in streams of consciousness, people's relative truth perception. Alongside that, since beginningless time, every moment, right now, forever, all the way into the future, has been running parallel to this changing consciousness, perceiving this, that, from heaven to hell, up and down through the power of karma, has been one constant, changeless dimension to the mind that has the relative experience, which is the ultimate, the absolute nature of that mind, which is not just blank, like a blank sheet of paper or an unprogrammed computer chip. It is goodness. It is Buddha. It is purity beyond anything we can imagine. Absolute. So pure, nothing impure. Absolute, without the impurities. Every moment has been running parallel. There is a potential for our mind to find. So that's why Buddha says we are like sleepers who are dreaming, because the possibility of awakening is there all the time. And like sleepers, we are completely plumbed into the illusion of the dream. So in the earlier talk, I mentioned the bodhisattva potential as either being awakened or asleep, and how the task of the Lama is to awaken the bodhisattva potential in us. So what is the awakening? It is realizing just what I just said, that there is so much endless suffering, and our mind is innately pure and Buddha. And so the bodhisattva longs to awaken that purity, to become that purity, so as to help the endless other beings find the same thing inside themselves. Because when they find that, and as they get closer to finding it, the suffering goes. So we call this bodhicitta. Citta, the mentality, the state of mind that longs for bodhi. Bodhi means awakening. in order to help each and every sentient being. So one takes the bodhisattva vow. So then, in that awakening, one realizes that this ultimate or absolute nature of mind is nirvana, but not the nirvana of the Shravaka path, which is simply going inside, away from the senses, into a state of shamatha, which seems everlasting. Let's call that nirvana with a little n, the Shravaka's nirvana. Now, what does nirvana mean? Some people think it means something, and it doesn't. It doesn't. You can't say what is nirvana and then describe it as a something. Nirvana is a negative term. It means without suffering. No more suffering. Suffering is no more. So it's true for the Shravaka path. When it comes to its completion, they've taken away the causes of suffering and nearly all of the results of suffering. There is no more suffering. But is that what the Buddha attained? No. The Buddha attained what we call the non-abiding nirvana. Non-abiding. So we call that nirvana with a big N. And it's not at all the same thing, because it is not a withdrawal into a shamatha, where all sensorial experience is shut off, because the bodhisattva, who has longed to help all sentient beings, how do you help sentient beings unless you're seeing them, hearing them, in contact with them, born into a world, incarnated in a world where there are sentient beings, because you love them so dearly, because their suffering needs to be removed. So withdrawing into total peace of shamatha is not the way of compassion. So the bodhisattva is still, of course, needs to get out of suffering. There is no difference. It's nirvana in the real sense of being free from suffering. But being free from suffering in a way where you are available, present in the lives of more and more and more beings. And when we do the numbers, as we did in the 5 stages of the path course, a little bit, on a first bodhisattva level, you're very, very present as a teacher, a helper, a support in the lives of 100 people. Second bodhisattva level, it's about 1,000, and then it goes up and up. So it's a very different freedom from suffering, because one's existence is engaged. And not only that, it needs to be engaged in life, because how else do you get the skills to help people? How else do you discover the amazing variety of minds and realities that are out there? You can't just go into shamatha and be totally, peace means peace, nothing's happening. How on earth are you going to be aware of suffering and be involved in somebody's life if you are totally gone? You can't. So so the bodhisattva's path is taking away suffering in ourselves as rapidly, as effectively as possible, but learning about other beings, learning skills to help other beings in the involvement with them. It's the only way we can become strong and wise. So the bodhisattva's aim is to attain non-abiding nirvana in order to help all sentient beings. Non-abiding means it's the idea of center, middle way. It doesn't get that way, and it doesn't get that way. So what's this way and that way? This way is it doesn't get lost in what is called self-centered peace, whereby you're exhausted. You can't take any more. And existence, life, people, problems, suffering, can't hack it. And the mind wants to go into itself, just find peace forever. So that's called self-centered peace. It is where the Shravaka goes, and we've seen it's a halfway house on the way to the Buddha's enlightenment. It's a very, very necessary path for some people, but the Bodhisattva's path avoids the temptation. Now, from the outset in the Bodhisattva path, when we practice shamatha, we must be aware of its beauty and of its potential pitfalls, because it's so nice when you sit and your mind just goes into peace with its blissfulness. Peace can be so blissful. It feels perfect, like everything is there when your mind goes into complete stability of shamatha. But every moment that we are lost in that, is a moment without compassion. And the Bodhisattva's path is a way of compassion. So through the power of compassion, we avoid getting drawn into, getting lost in shamatha, deep peace. So that's, we don't abide in peace, it says. Now the other side, what we're not abiding in is worldliness. Okay, you're not gone in deep peace, so you're out there engaged with other beings, other minds, other lives, other karmas, and very often other karmas which, because we have a long history of karma, involve you. You turn up in people's lives where you've got history together. People turn up in your life where you've got history together. And all of the pull of worldliness is there. Come back, ego is saying, come back, we miss you. It's like custom, like the adverts you get for software, you know. Come back, we miss you as a customer, and we'll give you a special bonus offer. So karma and samsara is fantastic once you're on the bodhisattva path of pulling out of your karma bank because you've not purified it all yet. This person, that person, this situation, temptations to power, to status, temptations to relationships, all sorts of things. So the bodhisattva is not going to disappear into shamatha, but at the same time as worldliness comes up, you're not going to get involved. There's a very, very good Christian phrase. In the world, but not of the world. Very, very nice. We have to learn to be in the world, but not of the world. So our mind, because it's all about mind, our mind, which is timelessly pure, we want to find that purity, but in our path of compassion, then we need to avoid falling into self-centered meditation through compassion and avoid falling into worldliness through wisdom. So it said the bodhisattva's path is the fusion of compassion and wisdom, because when each of these is perfect, we reach the nirvana, the freedom from everything which is limiting, which causes suffering. And we've avoided those two traps. So one thing we need to know, just in general, because this is sort of a Ken comment more than a scriptures comment, because I met lots of people, I hear lots of conversations, I talk with lots of people. The bodhisattva path is not an opt-out. It's not an opt-out from renunciation. We've seen with the Shravakas. Remember, it said they were sick and fed up with samsara. All they want is to run for the exit. It's said it's like a house on fire. The house is on fire. You get out. It says you don't sit down and start examining the nature of fire. You run for the exit. So we've seen the Shravakas have incredible renunciation. And Gampopa says, if the Shravakas, he says, if even the Shravakas had this renunciation as though somebody's hair has caught fire. So if your hair catches fire, you don't think, oh, I say, my hair's catching fire. Now, this is interesting. Yes, I recognize the characteristic smell of hair on fire. Now, what does Buddha recommend to do? Well, in fact, there are two schools of philosophy about hair on fire. And by that time, you're blazing. So what happens when your hair's on fire? Straight away, you have to pat it out instantly. So it says, if the Shravakas, seeing the suffering of samsara, the unnecessary pain and all of it, if they act so powerfully to renounce it, how much more so need the bodhisattva to reject everything that is samsaric. So because the bodhisattva's path is not one of running away in every way, but physically from life, mentally from life into shamatha, because it's one of involvement with other people. And in Vatrayana, it is using life's powerful and difficult situations that bring out our anger, that bring out our lust, that bring out our jealousy, using those as the path. We mustn't think the bodhisattva way is a kind of get-out clause where, oh, it's okay, I can be in the world and practice as a bodhisattva. I can have a bit of this, I can have a bit of that. It's kind of okay. Deep inside, the renunciation needs to be so much more than that of the Shravaka. I just wanted to mention that. I think you know what I mean. Maybe it's not relevant to you anyway, so that's okay. But it's something that I do come across. In our Kaju path, it says the very basis for our Mahamudra meditation is to be totally sick and fed up, like car sickness, from samsara. So anyway, that's the view. The two truths. Ultimately, we are Buddha. Relatively, there is existence in its vastness, and we're part of it. We have a human body. We're there, we can help others. This human body, such a precious opportunity to take on board dharma, to reach the non-abiding nirvana. So then our meditation practice needs to bring that view to life. So on our meditation cushion, this practice, the second of our four things, view, practice, conduct, resort. Our practice on the cushion means we need to bring ultimate truth to life. Voidness, Buddha nature, in our deepest meditation. And then on our cushion, we need to develop the bodhisattva motivation, the relative mind, where we realize what it means to be a precious human being and setting out on this marvelous journey to enlightenment for all beings, a journey of deepest love for everyone, a journey where the heart of compassion allows itself to open, a journey of deepest refuge, where we become heirs to the great masters, the bodhisattvas, the Buddhas of the past, and our mind aspires to nobility. So I'd like to read just a few things from Shantideva about this. First, when we are on the cushion and we're developing our relative mind, then again and again, and usually if you've taken the bodhisattva vow, at least 6 times a day, we go through this thinking. Just as the Buddhas of the past first resolved to reach enlightenment. Just as they first resolved, awakened their mind to who you really are and where you might be going, and then progressed stage by stage through the different levels of bodhisattva training, so many of them. So in the same way, I also will cultivate this heart set on enlightenment for the good of each and every sentient being. I too will progressively train in that training. So we stop 6 times a day at least, and we remind ourselves of our sacred intention, our sacred potential in this life. And we do so happily. Today, now, my life is fruitful. I have achieved true humanity. This is what a human mind is really there for. This is its potential. Today, I'm born into a new family. I'm born into this family of Buddhas. Today, I become their heir, an heir to the Buddhas. And now, from now on, no matter what is needed, whatever's required of me, I will act in accord with this. These is my real kindred family. And I'll never do anything which will sully, which will dirty, which will spoil this nobility of intention and direction, where from today onwards, life after life, better and better, stage by stage, I will head towards the non-abiding nirvana for everyone's sake. Just like a blind person might find a jewel in a heap of rubbish, so somehow, this bodhicitta is arising within me. This is life. This is the elixir of life that vanquishes the death of the worldly mind dead inside delusion. This is life. This is a treasure that's inexhaustible. The more we discover it, the more there is to it. It becomes so marvelous, a treasure that eliminates the poverty of the worldly mind. This is medicine, this heart set on enlightenment, full of love and compassion, caring for every being. Is medicine that alleviates what is ill, what is wrong, what is corrupt in this world. It's like on a journey where you find a hot journey and you find a tree where you can sit and rest your back in the shade. This is like a tree where all beings can find shelter, can find shade and help. Beings who are exhausted by their karma. And so on. There's no more. There's so much more in Shantideva's teachings. But with this kind of inspiration, then again and again, on our cushion, we cultivate this relative mind because our history goes back so many hundreds, thousands of lifetimes. And ego, it's a swine. It's always won. Up to now, we're still here. Ego is so tricky. It's such a survivor. We call it Mara, we call it ego, it doesn't matter. This time, we're going to win, for sure. That's our mind, the mind of the victor. But we must know just what we're up against. And so this is why again and again and again, we need to renew and refresh and inspire our bodhicitta wishes on the cushion. And at the same time realize that all relative existence is like a dream. It's like a mirage. It's like a conjuration. But nevertheless, it is so important because in one way, it's not like a dream. You see, what happens when we dream is you dream in the night, you wake up, you've got a day, You know, oh yeah, I was dreaming. And then you go back to sleep, you dream some more, and you wake up. It's a very good analogy. But in our bodhisattva mind, we see people have never woken up to understand just how asleep they were. It's been a non-stop dream for hundreds, thousands of lifetimes with unnecessary suffering. So now it says somehow like a person, a blind person, can't see them, but all of a sudden they're reaching out and there are priceless gems in their hand. We are realizing what wakefulness means. And so we need to restore it and restore it and restore it, reinforce it again and again because of the power of habit from all of our past. So that's what we do on the cushion. And then in our conduct, in our daily life, we need to put that into practice. And so we need, through the people we meet, the situations we meet, and so on, we need to apply all of those wonderful bodhisattva teachings about generosity, giving of ourselves, about purity of conduct, right conduct, about forbearance and putting up with what really makes us get upset in our interactions with life and other people, and diligence, finding joy in practicing dharma, and in meditation, and in wisdom development. So we have the 6 paramitas that we will explore in the coming weeks. So our conduct is, well, when Gyaltsab Rinpoche explained it, there's what is taken for granted. We must learn to stop hurting, first and foremost, hurting others, hurting ourselves. So to do less and less, and in the end, no harm, as much as is possible. And then on top of that, to learn how to bring good in a wise way, in a way that's without self-interest, in a way that takes us to a deeper and deeper realization of what love for other beings really means. Then the result will be the non-abiding nirvana. So we've rushed through those last few bits, last 5 minutes, 10 minutes, was very rushed. And because this is the last in this series. Now, the third of Gampopa's 4 Dharmas, the path is removing delusion, refers to this bodhisattva path. Why? Why? I need to do it very quickly, so I hope it makes a bit of sense. If we go back to the Shravaka path, they realize that all of suffering comes from the delusions we call ego. And so their path is getting rid of ego delusions in one's mind. And that takes away the very root of anger and pride and jealousy and everything else that leads in the end to suffering. Ego is the root. So they have what we call wisdom times 1. Wisdom times 1. The wisdom of no self, non-ego. So although that would take you to nirvana, out of suffering, nirvana with a small n, it won't take you to the non-abiding nirvana of the Buddha. For that, we need another aspect of wisdom, which is not just about the non-existence of a solid, lasting persona, self, but the wisdom about the truth, the ultimate truth, the absolute truth of everything and everyone that we perceive of as out there. Because remember, as bodhisattvas, we're no longer just going inside into shamatha. We are living a path that's engaged, that's involved in perception of other beings and life circumstances. So we need to know the truth about the way all of those appear to our mind, just as we needed to understand the way a solid delusion of ego manifested to our mind inside. So that second truth is called the voidness of dharma, voidness of ego, and the voidness of dharmas, phenomena. Those are the two delusions that the bodhisattva path removes. So on the path, the delusion, not just of ego, but of the way things are. So things seem to us external. They seem other than ourselves. They seem real in their own right, other people and other circumstances. And we need to penetrate that dimension of our mind's experience, which presents as other, and that we see as this vast, endless universe in time and space. It goes very deep. So that's why the third truth refers to the bodhisattva path, removing delusions. But now we move on to, in this overview, the fourth one, delusion manifests wisdom. Now that's weird. Delusion's delusion. So how can delusion manifest wisdom? Surely if the wisdom's there, there's no more delusion. Or if the delusion's there, the wisdom can't be there. Or these things, they look so fine when we read the words. It's only when you start thinking about it, then you, what? Delusion manifests primordial wisdom. So this is about the Vatrayana Path. Enormous topic. But the Vatrayana Path is described as the path without a path. Or, and this makes it easier to understand, the path where the result, the ultimate or the absolute, the result is taken as the means of practice. So now we're no longer thinking in traditional human thinking terms of time and space. Well, there you are, you're the bodhisattva, and now you're going to practice goodness, and you're going to develop the two accumulations and go through until the stage of accumulation and the stage of fusion, then get to the first bodhisattva level, and then maybe for a whole cosmic eon, you'll be going across the first 7 bodhisattva levels, and then in your third cosmic eon, so way ahead up in the future, you'll be going through the last 3 bodhisattva levels and becoming Buddha. This kind of view of time and space. In Vatrayana, no. Why? Because parallel to our everyday consciousness, this Buddha mind has always been there, is there right now. And the whole Vatrayana path is based on that fact. We take the result, which is there right now, the Buddha mind, the ultimate mind, the absolute mind, and we do all we can to awaken to it in the moment. And we see that even the idea of a long-term path gets in the way of that. It's here, right now, in all of us. And so the special way we do that, and what all of Vajrayana depends on, the methods are secondary. There are all these different tantras, there are 4 levels of tantra, there's this method, that method, 6 yoga, all the rest of it is secondary. All of Vajrayana, in theory, depends on one thing. You have a guru. That guru embodies absolute, ultimate truth in your life right now. And then you surrender to that. And whatever method the guru gives you, whether it's building houses for Milarepa, whether it's doing formal practice in a 3-4 year retreat, whatever method, the awakened mind of the guru gives your unawakened mind, you will apply with 100% confidence. Now, we need to know this because these days people pin the word Vajrayana onto the wrong things. And it's what I mentioned last week already. People can have done 4 8, 12 years of retreat. And in the end, if you look very closely, they still haven't taken refuge. They're still not surrendered, even though they've done the 6 yogas, even though they've done dream yoga, tummo, even though they've received so much instruction, they've done so much shamatha, they've practiced for 18 hours a day. So we can't say they've practiced Vatrayana, they've practiced the Vatrayana method. Or like if we practice Chinrezig or Tara, we are visualizing, we are saying a mantra. We might think, oh, I'm practicing Vatrayana, but you're not. You're not. You're using Vatrayana method as a way of practicing the bodhisattva path. Tara and Chinrezig become way of developing shamatha, way of developing meditation, and we learn a lot about compassion and many, many things. It's very valuable. But Vatrayana depends on the fact that you have a guru, and that whatever the practice is the special dialogue, interaction between you and a guru to awaken your mind. So anyway, I can't go further on this topic. It's an important topic, but if you say, what is Vatrayana? This is what all my teachers have taught me. It's what's in all of the texts. There's no doubt about it. It's not Ken's opinion. It starts with Vatrayana is when a properly qualified guru works with a properly qualified disciple. Both are extremely rare. It's rare to find a fully qualified guru. It's rare for a disciple to have all the qualities that make such an interaction possible. And quite interestingly, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, when asked by people about, they say, how do I pick a guru? How do I find one? And, is it okay to check out a guru, or must we just trust them? And he says more and more, and no, give yourself all the time to check them out. You must do. Lately, he's been saying, give it 12 years before you make the guru-disciple commitment. Once you made that commitment, then the rules change, and you have to see your guru as absolutely pure. I touched on that last time, I think, about how otherwise we start projecting negativity. So anyway, Vatrayana is that, and Mahamudra is the essence of Vatrayana. So we can use these 4 as a template also for the Mahamudra or the Vatrayana path. Now we can do that 2 ways. Of course, there's always 2 ways or 3 ways or 4 or 5. So one in general, very general, about Vatrayana path in terms of these 4 dharmas, and another one, how can you say, it's more homely, it's more about what we're doing when we practice Mahamudra in our Kagyu tradition. So the first one, as a general template of Vatrayana, what is the view? Without any doubt, it is the view of Buddha nature, that our mind is innately good and pure, and always has been and always will be. That view is what everything else is based upon. Now, when we do practice Vatrayana in general, we have 4 levels of Tantra. We have Kriya and Charya and Yoga Tantra and highest Yoga Tantra. And so all the different tantric traditions of India fit into one or more of those. Some of the practices we do these days, they come more from Kriya, like a Nyungne practice is mainly Kriya Yoga. There's lots of cleanliness, special diet, lots of outer practices of prostrations, offering, and so on, typical of Kriya Tantra. Some of them, like Dzogchen and Mahamudra practices, they're more highest Yoga Tantra. All of that's complicated. Can't go there today. But all of them are based on the Buddha nature view, but in particular, highest Yoga Tantra, Mahamudra, and Dzogchen are really, really based on Buddha nature view. If you don't have the view, in other words, if you've not learnt the view and thought deeply about it and realized what's going on in the view, then the methods won't work. The methods won't work. View is everything in highest yoga tantra. So the view is Buddha nature. We need to learn about Buddha nature, the Buddha nature teachings. The practice is whatever tantra it is. In the past, in India, what all of our teachers tell us is that people practice one tantra. They weren't like Tibetans, they said, who practiced so many different ones. They just did one, and they did it well. They say Tibetans have got a bump on the head where they've received so many empowerments. They've been given the blessing with so many bumpas, vases, and they've received transmission of this, transmission of that. They go around collecting empowerments. They said the strength of Indian Buddhism was that they met one guru, the guru gave them one practice, and you did that step by step until it worked, just one practice. So the practice is whatever has been given by your guru. In Milarepa's case, building houses. He didn't come from the building house lineage from India, where there are a whole set of instructions about how to teach a disciple to build houses, but it was the method. So whatever method the guru gives, you do. Now, in our particular Kagyu tradition, we did this in a previous course. And so if you want to, if you weren't there, it's in the short prayer to Vajradhara course. We have two main streams of Vatrayana practice. It's called the path of liberation and the path of skillful means. The path of liberation is the Mahamudra teachings from Saraha that Mapa got from Maitripa and brought to Tibet and gave to Milarepa, and they've come down in our lineage. All of the direct teachings on the nature of mind from the great Kagyu Siddhas, Mahasiddhas of India, and then of Tibet, directly dealing with mind itself. That's called the path of liberation, or Mahamudra. Then we have the path of skillful means that comes from Tilopa and from his 100 gurus he had. And he gathered the essence of all their different tantric methods, put them into 6 key practices that he gave to Naropa, that Naropa propagated. And then Tilopa himself was enlightened. He had an amazing life. And he went to what's now Pakistan, Afghanistan, Swat, met the Dakinis there. It's a hair-raising story. But at the end of all of that, he became enlightened. So his mind became Vajradhara. His teaching to his disciples was no different than if Vajradhara Buddha was teaching them. So he passed on his own lineages from Indian masters. Secondary, primary, he taught directly from enlightenment as Vajradhara. So he taught the various tantric methods for mastering our inner energies, our channels, our chakras, for mastering sleep and dream, for mastering the bardo state between lives. The 6 yogas that we now call yogas of Naropa. So that's also the lineage that we practice on the cushion. So that, why? So that now in the moment, we awaken our mind to its Buddha nature. They're just methods. The awakening to that one timeless truth is what it's all about. That's what we call Mahamudra. And then in the post-meditation time, off the cushion, the conduct is applying the Buddha nature teachings to life as we meet it, and using the methods and the realization that have come to us on the cushion through the path of liberation or the path of skillful means, or both of them together. The result will be non-abiding nirvana, but in the Vatrayana path, and in particular in our Mahamudra path, we talk more in terms of what are called the 4 yogas. The 4 stages of yoga means integration. One point freedom from elaboration, one taste, no meditation. The 4 stages of integration. Now, he says, with one eye on the clock, because there's still a little bit more to go. That's one way of using the 4 Dharmas of Gampopa as a general template for view, meditation practice, conduct, and the result. More locally, how do we apply them? Dharmas become dharma. Dharma. These are what we call the 4 ways of changing the mind. The 4 deep contemplations that never end until you're Buddha, because they just go deeper and deeper of how precious a human existence is. It just becomes more and more mind-bogglingly wonderful that we are human with this opportunity right now. Contemplation 1. Contemplations that change the mind. If it's changed your mind, and you should do it until your mind changes, you will be happy to be human. It comes at a cost. Being human, being embodied, is not easy. It's an incredible limitation. This body is a huge prison. Being inside these 5 senses is a huge prison. Having to be born, getting old, getting sick, dying, being incarnated comes with a huge price tag. But the potential is amazing. And when we've truly contemplated that, and we can do it through up to 42 different sub-meditations to get the point home, you will feel so happy to wake up in the morning, human still, with this opportunity we have now. So the 4 ways of changing the mind are meant to change the mind. And until your mind's changed, you really need to hammer on in with them. Second one is impermanence. Impermanence. And if that changes our mind, then we're going to know that everyone and everything we meet, and fame and glory, and this body that we live in, and the people who are close to us, friends, enemies, and all the stories that develop through that, they all come and go. Always, always. That will never change. So we become less involved with this life and not involved with this life. Instead, what involvement with this life has done has blinded us to the fact that we have so many hundreds more lives to go, to the future, to preparing the next life and making it even better, and the life after that, the whole bodhisattva journey. So we need to meditate on impermanence, number 2, and death, very important, until they've done their job and we are not clinging anymore to the things and the people of this life. We need to meditate on suffering in our fellow beings and in ourselves until we realize the great need for compassion. And we need to meditate on karma as the cause of the suffering, to understand the mechanisms in ourselves, in life around us, that our whole bodhisattva journey of wisdom and compassion is going to be the understanding of. So the 4 ways of changing the mind are the dharmas, the way all of our experience becomes dharma. And then dharma becomes a path. So how do we make our Mahamudra Vatrayana Path work? That's through the special foundations, 1, 2, and 3. So through the refuge and bodhicitta practice with prostrations, which most people call prostrations, but it's not about doing lots of physical exercise. It's about making your refuge 100% solid, reliable. Changing your mind so that your mind is in a state of refuge all the time. And bodhicitta practice. That, and then purifying your own karma which is so vital so that you can make progress through Vajrasattva practice. And then learning the joy of mindfulness through mandala offering, whereby every moment that you see and hear, and your five senses are at work, every moment that your mind is at work thinking and feeling, it becomes an offering to the Buddhas, to your fellow beings. We are taking all of our experience away from ego-centered to enlightenment and all sentient being-centered. So that's how our Dharma becomes a path. And then on the path, delusion is removed, is through the Guru Yoga practice. Remember, the Guru is the presence in your life of ultimate mind, absolute mind. It's as simple as this. The Guru's presence is there. The more you can open to it, the more you realize your own Buddha mind. All the rest is method. The truth is there. However much you open, that much comes in. So through the Guru Yoga practice, we open to the Guru, who is the channel of the lineage. When that happens, you will feel that your Guru is not just one person, but what they have, they got from their Guru. From their Guru, it goes all the way back to Buddha mind, Vajradhara mind, Tilopa, his realization, Milarepa. They're all there in your Guru. So Guru Yoga is taking away that level of consciousness, samtana, the play of the consciousness that you've been involved with all of your past lives. And instead, through opening to your Guru's blessing, tuning into, feeling, becoming the timeless blessing of Buddha nature. And then the result, the four yogas, come through practicing the Guru's special instructions. So we get the one-pointedness and so on. Now, I've seen today these four yogas have been very wrongly presented sometimes, because the first one's called 1 point. And people think that if you've got some stability in shamatha, that's it, you've reached one-pointedness. I've seen some famous names get this quite wrong. And their disciples who listen to them, they sit down, they do shamatha, their mind gets stable, they think, oh, I'm already in the one-pointed stage. It's terrible. It's terrible. Remember, this comes after the ordinary foundations, the special foundations, the Guru Yoga fusion, where the lineage is alive within you. What happens is that through the Guru's instructions, you will practice shamatha, vipassana, and at one point you will have your first full awakening to Buddha mind. And then afterwards that becomes, you revisit and revisit for longer periods and long until in the end there's some stability. So one-pointed doesn't mean shamatha one-pointed on an object. It means your mind can be one-pointedly within Buddha mind. That's got 3 stages, the lower stage, the middle stage, and the upper stage, depending on how you experience that. And then that becomes Chutrao. Chutrao means freedom from elaboration. All of the complications of your worldly mind and consciousness, all of the thinking, the mindsets, the projections, all of that history of view and all the other things, somehow you've been lifted beyond it. It's like when you go up in an airplane, you pierce through the clouds, and all of a sudden you can look down and there's white clouds, black clouds, all sorts of clouds, but you're up in the land of eternal sunshine. You're free from all the thoughts and the conceptual elaborations, the I and other, all of that stuff in Buddha mind. So that's got a lesser, a middling, and a greater stage. Through that, then, as it matures, you get what is called one taste, where the one taste of Buddha mind is felt more and more to pervade everything, lesser, middling, greater stages. And through that, being totally, in the end, totally in the one taste. There's nothing more to do. And practice becomes meaningless. So if you've gone through a door into a room, why would you go out the door just to come back in again? If your mind is totally in the one taste, then there's nothing more to do. Although there is the greater and the middling and the lesser stages of that, because we're on a journey. So anyway, I have to finish there. We've come to the end. And I'm sorry to have rushed so many deep topics, but we've come to the end of the formal teaching. So let's dedicate this now. Makes it easier when I edit the video afterwards. Anything that was good, anything that was meaningful, let's share with all our fellow beings, and in particular, to dedicate it that our own path is without any stain. Sunam diye tamche zikpane topnenye pe dranam pamchene je gana je palap trukpaye sipitsole drowa rasho janchob semcho rempoche ma je panam je chochi je pan nyampa me padang kongne kondo belwara sho. And thank you all very, very much.